Well, despite the holiday and a nasty cold, I have some more content to show you on the twisted table, and I'm going to start by improving this taper on the inside twisted piece of the leg. And that gives me the opportunity to show you this jig I used on the bandsaw to make the cut possible, since it's got such a heavy twist in it. That the piece sticking up registers against the twisted piece of wood and allows me to make a supported cut on that twisted piece. Now, in my dry fit, some of these dowels had swelled to the point that I actually had to break them apart to get them out, and I didn't want to mess with that because this is a tricky glue up. So in order to make them just a little bit narrower, I clamped a plane in my vise and shaved all the plugs down so that they're a nice easy fit. I don't want to be messing around with hammering. The glue up's tough enough as it is. I needed to shorten my threaded rods that hold everything together. And I scuff them up and epoxy the nuts in place. And then a lot of what I've been doing is repetitive from the previous video, building the twisted columns and the feet with the pieces of cherry and them forming the foot blocks and putting the curves in them and all those details you can see from last time. I messed around with a little bit of stop motion animation to get two legs on, and then kind of got sick of that. So here's all four of them finished. And carrying this table was more awkward than I thought it would be. But I am able to show you very well what it's going to look like, despite the fact that these aren't glued up yet. They're not smooth. They're all kind of rough, but you can definitely get the general idea of what this table is going to look like. The next step is gluing them up, and I ran into some trouble here, but before we get into that, I used the iron and water trick to steam out some dings and dents that had occurred throughout the course of fabricating these outer leg twisted parts. And I use a card scraper to clean them up. And a spoke shave as well. Take the kerf marks out from the bandsaw. And I can't resist hitting it with some mineral spirits to just see what that's going to look like. And back to more sanding for the feet. I wanted to pause for a moment and show you a dust protection solution that I use. These are First Defense nasal screens developed for allergies, but great for wood dust because they filter 1 micron particles, 90% removal. Even better than that, I think. Here's a scary shot of me wearing them. Great if you have some facial hair. I don't like wearing a mask. I really like them a lot. Back to the glue up. I thought that attaching the outer twisted pieces to the foot first and then worrying about the table later would make sense, but that ended up not working out for me. First of all, this glue up was really tricky because the opposite ends aren't flat, and it was really hard to get good even clamping pressure and close up those gaps. I don't show this, but I actually had to pull it all apart right before the glue dried, clean everything back up, redo it. This was really a stressful glue up, and even though I did end up getting the gaps to close, it still didn't work out for a reason I'll explain here in a second. The issue was when I made the cuts on the miter saw, the twisted form were under tension, so it sprung back, and sprung back quite a lot. You see, here's how things just don't line up very well. I thought I'd be able to make a clamping form to put that tension back in and then glue it all up, but I got nervous that I'd rip the dowels out, and it was just a lot more spring back and tension than I thought I was going to have to deal with. So I needed a new solution. What I ended up doing that did work out is to just dry fit everything up, similar to what I'd previously shown, and then address the gaps by actually removing some more of the wood to get them to close up. So here I'm marking out the wood that needs to go away in order to close those joints up. I did this modification on my homemade disc sander by putting a dowel on the front to register against the twisted piece. This is similar to how I made the cuts on the bandsaw. You just have one linear point of registration for the piece. The fact the rest of it's curved, or twisted rather, doesn't matter. This worked pretty well. I only had to go back and forth once in order to get these gaps to close up well. Here you can see what it looks like. Still a dry fit. So the next step is to turn this rather jagged construction with glue squeeze outs and things into a nice, smooth, continuous, curving, twisting form. And I use many hand tools, probably not out of necessity, more out of ADD. I get bored with using one and pick up another. So I'll just let you watch me use just about everything under the sun in order to do the finessing of this leg. Last step, I had to attach the twisted column to the twisted foot, and I had to preserve the angle in order for it to fit into the recess in the table. So I use those pieces of tape to do that, and I don't need a lot of very strong glue, so I just use some CY glue and use the tape to keep everything in place, the threaded rod for the clamping pressure, and that was good enough to hold everything in place. And then I moved it inside to finally do the glue up. I used epoxy for the better open time, and this went really smooth. So I guess after one awful glue up, I was due for a break. I don't even need any clamps because that threaded rod does all the work. And there it is, one leg permanently in place. I'm starting to believe I might actually finish this someday.